So this is now the last part of our video. Briefly, we'll be talking about symbolism and how it applies to, how it actually helps in the interpretation of Gabriela Mistral's Tiny Feet. Before we go there, let us just talk about the possible answers that you might have on my question on the previous, at the end of the previous video. I asked you, what do you think Tiny Feet is all about, considering all the imagery that we have found in Tiny Feet? Some of the imagery here are, well, the very first line that we have, child's tiny feet. So you have tiny feet. It's a visual imagery. Blue with cold. Blue with cold is it's not really color blue, but it represents how cold the feet are. So it's more of tactile imagery, and so on and so forth. So you have powerful imagery here, like tiny wounded feet, bruised, abused, where else? Bleeding little souls, suffering little gems. These are very powerful imagery because they create, basically they create an image of what kind of subject the poet is talking about here. It's talking about a child who is suffering, who is hurt. So most of you might be thinking about child abuse, which is right, which is correct. Child labor could also be a possible answer to that, could also be a possible interpretation of Tiny Feet. But if we take a look closer, even closer, much more closer rather, to the poetry, we will be led to a specific abuse of children that Gabriela Mistral, or at least the persona, is trying to show us. And we could do that by continuously investigating, or investigating and uncovering the clues that the writer has left for us to find out. And we can do that by considering the symbolisms that we could find in the poetry. So when we say symbolism, I could define symbolism this way by showing you this picture. When you are shown a picture of a cross or a crucifix, the dictionary would tell you its literal and technical meaning. That is our denotation. That is the literal meaning of the word. But a cross could symbolize a lot of things to a lot of people. It could symbolize Christianity, it could symbolize sacrifice, it could symbolize salvation, it could symbolize love, it could symbolize suffering, or whatever. It could symbolize the church, or whatever it is. Meaning, it's the connotation that we're after when we talk about symbolism. Now, if you ask me the question, are there a lot of symbolism found in Tiny Feet? My answer would be a sounding yes. There are a lot of symbolism that we can find in Tiny Feet. It's a very simple looking poetry, but it is full of meaning. It's full of, I still couldn't find the word that I was looking for. It's still full of clues that the writer somehow wants us to discover, wants us to see, in order for us to fully appreciate and understand the poetry. So, symbolism. Okay. The first thing that I want you to notice is how many times was the word feet mentioned in tiny feet. How many times? From the title itself, tiny feet. A child's tiny feet, that's 2. Tiny wounded feet, that's 3. Where else? Child's tiny feet, that's 4. Right? Tiny feet, the title. Child's tiny feet, the first line. Tiny wounded feet. And then child's tiny feet 4 times. Now, I think I've already mentioned this to you. If something, especially in literature and in texts, if something is repeated over and over again, the repetition means something. What is that? That the writer wants us to take notice of these words. And 4 times that the word feet was mentioned all throughout the poetry, it means that somehow the writer wants us to notice the word feet. And what is feet? Especially when you imagine child's tiny feet. You could imagine a cute little, pair of feet na gusto nyong kagatin, na gusto nyong kurut-kurutin, malinis, and all of those things. But let us isolate the word feet from a child's tiny feet. Let's just consider, isolating the word feet. And it might symbolize something. Guys, have you ever been asked the question, how large are your feet? Anong shoe size mo? Gaano kalaki ang paa mo? Or girls, have you ever tried asking a guy, how large are your feet? With that kind of smile. With that kind of malicious smile. Were you actually asking about his feet? Or were you asking about something else? Okay. They say men with large shoes have large... No, wait. Oh my God, I ruined all of it. They say that men who have large feet have large shoes. Okay, now let's talk about your feet. How large are your feet? There's something malicious about that question. Because at the back of your mind, you're actually not asking about the guy's feet. You're asking about, are you aware of human proportions? Sabi nila, di ba? When you when you stretch your arms like this is the same as your height or something like that. Yeah, and something like that. Human proportions. And that has something to do with our feet. For the guys, it is a very well-known, I don't know what it is. It's a very well-known fact. I don't even know if it's a fact. When you are asked how large are your feet, at the back of your mind, the other person was actually teasing you and challenging you to tell him or her the size of your penis. Okay? That's why in some movies, the girls would usually look at the guy's feet and, laugh about it. Yeah, something like that. That is what we call a phallic symbolism. P-H-A-L-L-I-C symbolism. It represents the phallus. Phallus are the genital, or is the genital of man and woman. Everything that's pointed. Just like this tower right here. It's a very huge phallic symbol. If any one of you lives in Imus and you pass by the Imus Tennis Club, there's a huge water tank there. And from afar, you can actually see it. Why? Because it's erect. It's a very tall thing. And it stands erect. And it shows power over the other, establishments and buildings surrounding it that are too small compared to its size. And that is an example of a phallic symbolism. These things right here, as you can see, these are three of the most powerful places in the world. You have this obelisk in London, this obelisk in Washington, and this obelisk in Vatican. Three powerful places on earth. They would welcome you with phalluses to symbolize their power. Now, the phallic symbol is not only limited to men. Women also have our own phallic symbolism. And you see this, that's called foot cleavage. If you are fond of wearing doll shoes, that the doll shoes would only cover part of your fingers and it would still show this, I don't know what you call this, basta, it's called your foot cleavage. And some people find that sexy. Some women feel sexy when they wear doll shoes, when they expose that part of their toes. And it's teasing. Not to mention high heels, which are pointed, again, Men or even other women would consider high heels to be symbols of sexiness, symbols of women in power. When you see someone in high heels, you look at her as either a very sexy being or a very powerful leader. So that's phallic symbolism. And 4 times had the word feet mentioned in tiny feet. Phallic symbolism. What does it have something to do with tiny feet? And then you have the word cold. Cold here doesn't only symbolize the physical coldness, but it's coldness to the core. You know what I mean? Indifference, apathy. The very opposite of love is coldness, is indifference. I remember my re-ed professor when I was in second year college. He told us that he believes that the hell is a very cold place. Unlike the image that our parents and our teachers would create in our minds, that hell is full of fire, it's very hot, you will burn. But for him, it's a very cold place. And we understood that as a very indifferent place, which is probably true because everybody's suffering, but nobody cares. That's hell, right? And you can actually experience that on earth while you're living. You could experience hell because of indifference of people. As what you can see in these pictures right here, it could represent, it goes beyond this coldness that we feel right here. It could be something like this, that you're suffering and you're alone, but people around you seem to just go about their normal thing. Cold. You see someone lying on the street, you're not even sure if they're still alive or they're already dead, but people keep on passing by. Cold. Indifferent. And I'm sure everybody has done our share of coldness. And I don't know about you. You're still young, but I hope you would not feel coldness from people that you love, because it's a very, very painful thing to experience. Yeah. Humuhugot lang ako, but I hope you understand what coldness symbolizes. The word cold, it goes beyond the physical feeling that we have, but it's apathy. It's indifferent. Just like what I said, indifference is the total opposite of love. It's not actually hate. Because if you hate somebody, you still feel something towards that person. That's why you hate him. That's why you're still affected by whatever they do. But once you feel indifferent, wala ka nang pakialam. You wouldn't care kung mamatay ba sila, mahulog ba sila sa hagdan, masagasaan ba sila ng sasakyan. You wouldn't care. That's indifference. That's coldness. Coldness to the core. That's how I define it. Next is the soil, because it says there, abused, bruised. Let's go back a little bit. Yeah, bruised all over by pebbles, abused by snow and soil. Okay, snow and soil. You have here soil. How could somebody be abused by snow and soil? Snow, we already figured that it represents coldness, and when we say coldness, it actually means indifference. But soil, if you take a look at the symbolism of soil, represents fertility. Now, I hope you're already making sense of these words little by little. So, at the end, you could just have a confirmation of whatever interpretation you're already building in your heads right now. And then, there's a mention of a flower there, tuberose. Tuberose. This is native in Central America. Why not just a rose? Why not lily? Why not sunflower? Why not, what else? Why not tulip? Why tuberose? You see, the writer had lots and lots of options when it comes to flowers. But why, have you ever asked, why did she mention tuberose? Let's answer that. This family name is Amaryllis. This is commonly known as lily. So this is a lily. This is a night blooming plant. Night blooming, meaning it's closed in the morning and then it blooms at night. And then it leaves, just like sampaguita. Sampaguita is a lily. It belongs to the family of lily. And sampaguita is very well known for its fragrance. Na kahit pinitas mo na, it still has that fragrance for a very long time. So, night blooming plant and leaves fragrance. Talking about symbolism of this, it symbolizes voluptuousness. Voluptuousness is, something that describes the physical appearance mostly of women. That they're thick. They're not skinny. Malaman. Okay, that's voluptuousness. And it represents dangerous pleasure. So, why would the writer include a flower that symbolizes dangerous pleasure? Why would she include a flower like that in a poetry about children? Have you ever wondered that? So, aside from that, physically, it's a lily, it's a tube, you see? Like this. it is another example of phallic symbolism. Everything like this, like that, is a phallic symbolism. It represents the male phallus, the penis. Everything like this, male. Kaya nga, di ba, the military, that's how they symbolize their rank. So, the more penis you have, the more powerful you are in the military. Okay. Lima tong ano ko dito. I'm a general. So, that's it. But everything that's like this represents the female phallus, the vagina. Not really that, but the womb. Okay? The womb. Ganito lang yan eh. I hope you forgive my, you might find this visually improper, but to give you an idea, everything that's like this is male, and everything that's like this with a hole is female. So basically, that's where you insert the male thing. And phallic symbolism is actually found everywhere, even in engineering, electrical engineering, carpentry. You have the male socket and the female socket. Pag bibili ka ng bumbilya or ng socket sa hardware, tatanungin sa'yo, male or female socket? Because the male socket ay yung mga patusok. And the female socket ay yung mga, yeah, you get the idea. Okay, so, kaya nga diba, if you could recall, and if you're familiar with the Da Vinci Code, doon nag-umpisa yun eh. They were saying that beside Jesus in the Last Supper, painted by Leonardo da Vinci, was not actually John, but it was actually Mary Magdalene. And during the Last Supper, in the Bible, it says there, na merong kalis. Kalis. Wine. Yung lalagyan ng wine, or baso ng wine. Something like this. Okay? Something like this. A chalice. Now, if you take a look, Leonardo da Vinci's Last Supper, you cannot actually find a chalice there. But the Bible says, there's a chalice, lalagyan ng wine. And according to critics, kaya walang chalice doon, because the chalice was actually the womb of Mary Magdalene. The womb of Mary Magdalene. Phallic symbolism pa rin. So, it's kind of everywhere. And tuberose, another phallic symbolism, and we have already identified 2 phallic symbolisms in tiny feet. Now, you might wonder, what do these phallic symbolisms have to do with a poetry that talks about children? So, I want you now to read again Tiny Feet and be more aware of the symbolisms that it offers to us. You even have gems. Gem, usually, how are gems drawn? Like a diamond. Like a diamond. And diamond is still shaped this way. Pag binaliktad mo, it will be shaped this way. So, it's still phallic symbolism. So, anong ginagawa nito sa isang tulak na tungkol sa bata? And you were talking about child abuse, child labor, child abuse, based on the imagery that we've found in Tiny Feet. Now, we combine all of these symbolisms with all the imagery that you have found. And we could actually modify our interpretation a little bit more to actually specify what the possible message of the author or the persona is to the readers. To help you in the interpretation, I'd like you to introduce to this guy, Claudius Pignac. Claudius Pignac is a very well known and influential Chilean businessman. And where is Gabriela Mistral from? Yes, she was also from Chile. So, what does this man have to do with with Gabriela Mistral? They did not meet. They lived in a different century, but in different centuries. But you know, you wouldn't want to know this guy. Why? Because sometime in 2004, he was imprisoned for child prostitution. He was not he was not discovered, or his doings were not discovered until 2004. But his family owned this spa, but it was actually a front because the spa also operates as a brothel, as a prostitution den. And not only prostitution den, but child prostitution den. Take note. Let me repeat that. Child prostitution den. Where? In Chile. For how long has this been going on? For as long as people have known it. And it was until 2004 that somebody was brave enough to speak about it, and somebody was courageous enough to take notice of it and do something about it. It's been going on for so long in Chile. And of course, it's not only in Chile, but all over the world, including the Philippines. The Philippines is in the list of Interpol and FBI for child prostitution. Probably we know somebody who's involved in child prostitution, child pornography, or who has been victims of child prostitution, child pornography. But the question is, do we do something about it? Knowing that it exists doesn't make a change. Knowing that it's happening without action, there's no difference. And somehow, Tiny Feet is telling us once again that this is happening around us. But unfortunately, we ignore things. We abuse these children with snow, with our indifference, with our blind eyes. That's what the poem says. We ignore them. But we are aware, very much aware of their plight. But we don't do something about it. A child's tiny feet, blue with cold. How can they see and not protect you? Oh my God. Tiny wounded feet, bruised all over by pebbles, abused by snow and soil. Man being blind ignores that where you step, you leave a blossom of bright light. That where you have placed your bleeding little souls, a redolent tuberose grows. Since, however, you walk through the streets so straight, you are courageous without fault. Child's tiny feet, two suffering little gems, how can the people pass unseeing?